Welcome to the Men After God podcast, where you will be challenged and encouraged as you pursue God, achieve success, and raise a thriving family. Join your host, Dustin, and his guests on a weekly journey to grow as husbands, fathers, and men after God. Here is your host, Dustin Alley.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Men After God podcast. I'm excited to have my friend Davey in studio. I don't get to have many in-studio interviews, Davey. Thanks for coming out, man. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we are getting into a fantastic conversation today with Davey and talk about his life, how he has been a follower of Jesus, what he is doing, and what God is doing in and through his life and his Open Doors Outdoors organization. You're going to be blessed. You're going to be challenged, and I hope you're going to be encouraged to invite some people to connect with Davey so that he can help you and anyone that you may know coming out of the military or has been a veteran, is currently in the military, just kind of overcoming some of the various things that can impact those of us that have served. So first off, Dave, let me just say thank you so much for your service. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. Hey, listen, so Davey got in years ago, right? 91?
91. Yeah. I got out in 97. It's been quite a time since.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. And so now, but you were a follower of Jesus too. So you started following Jesus when you were young.
Yeah. Saved. My mom was, she definitely led our entire household to Christ. And yes, 7, 8, 9, I was just a little guy. And, yeah, so I tell everybody born and raised in the church at that age. And, my mom, got saved first and then brought the whole family and eventually my dad and then, my sister and then me.
Oh, man. That's awesome. That's so cool. And now I think this is right. You grew up at the church, like you were there for a long period of time, right?
Yeah. So so that we started off in East Hartford, Connecticut, and, we're part of that as it grew. And then I was there up until my mom passed, when I was 19. So yeah, that was my home church for many years. And then right after that, I went to the service.
Right into the Marine Corps. Yeah, David just mentioned his mom passing. Guys, I don't know if you've ever been to boot camp, but the day he was supposed to leave, he said his mom passed. And then he went a month later and did great things.
Yeah, that was, looking back, it's and even our kind of our pre-interview to this, just kind of telling the story and listening to it. I'm like, man, if I heard someone telling that story, I'd be like, wow, that's a rough start that guy had.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, God's so good. He takes a mess and makes a miracle. So
oh, absolutely, I love it. But I mean, you mentioned it, like going into the Marine Corps and stuff. It was difficult. Do you think? I'm sure it did. But how would you say the loss of your mother before entering boot camp kind of impacted you there?
It was rough. When I look back on that time, I was definitely the first few weeks. I think a lot of people cry anyways.
Yeah.
You put your head down to write a letter.
First week, man. It was first night for me.
They were like,
what am I doing?
It's rough. You're writing a letter and you're trying not to look around and your tears are dropping onto the page and you're looking around and everyone's crying. You're like, oh, okay, I feel a little better. But yeah, no, I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. I missed my home. I missed, I definitely didn't have time to process what had just happened. But yeah, it made it much harder. But I also thrived in that environment. Mm-hmm. I thrived. The physical activity, the strain. It was exactly what I needed. God knew exactly what I needed.
You know what I didn't expect in boot camp? The academics.
Yeah.
That one caught me off guard. Everybody jokes about Marines eating crayons, but listen, if y'all knew what we had to sit through in boot camp and memorize and have to regurgitate, like, oh man.
Yeah.
That is not why I joined the Marine Corps.
Yeah. And screaming it while you're marching, all the different, I can't remember any of it now, I just remember there was one question I didn't know and I wrote down the answer, Shannon O'Bannon. And the drill instructor was going through the sheets and he's like, Shannon O'Bannon. Who is Shannon O'Bannon? And he's looking over Edwards, So yeah, it was, and that, the academic piece has followed me my whole life. I was always been hands-on, and as my kids, I watch my 3 kids now, and I watch them prep for tests, and I'm just so blessed to watch them because it wasn't me. I didn't have that capacity to retain knowledge like they do, and a lot of what I do now is still hands-on. So.
No, and we're going to get into that for a minute. I just want to highlight, you heard what he said, guys, not the academic, but hands-on, has found some success in life following Jesus. I love it. So Marine Corps, you were, you said a C-130 mechanic?
Yeah, C-130 mechanic. Went through all the aviation tech schools across the U.S. and then ended up being stationed in Newburgh, New York.
Okay, all right. And then you were in 6 years?
Yep, I started off. I went in as a USMC reserve.
Okay.
The first year and a half or 2 years was school, and then the rest was reserves.
Okay, all right. That's awesome. Man, I love it. And then now coming out of the Marine Corps, talk about that transition there, because that's where your life started to start getting a little heavy, and really seems as though what kind of led you to where you are today.
Yeah. So when I was just about done with my time in the Marines, and I was on a training exercise in Newburgh, and I was a training chief at the time with an active duty gunnery sergeant. And we were taking out a group of, we in the Marine Corps, we call them fat body Marines. And they're just guys that weren't as, they're just, they were our guys that,
husky fellas.
They were husky, all great guys. But just, their motivation to PT was a little less than other people. So, so the idea was, this gunnery sergeant was the training, he was the training, the NCO training officer for the health and wellness of his active duty unit. And also we fell underneath his thumb, and he had no time or patience for that. So we went out for boots and utes. Boots and utes is when you wear your boots, your trousers, and a t-shirt. And
it's terrible.
It's not fun. And it makes it even harder for the guys that are a little heavy.
Yeah.
So as we're running, we have our formation, and I'm behind the gunnery sergeant, and he's straight laced. We say he bled green, and he was definitely did things by the book. And as I'm keeping pace to his feet behind him, and as we're running, we hit this gravel road, and I'm watching his feet, and he kicks a rock with his left foot. And I'm thinking, like a child would kick a rock, and it happened so fast. And as the rock kind of veered off course on the left, his body followed the rock, almost like he was chasing the rock and kicking it. And it happened so fast, and he ended up falling head first into the deck. And I got to him, I rolled him over, and he was dying. He was it was brutal. It was if you ever saw there's a movie with it was Patrick Swayze, I think, and Demi Moore. And I can't remember the name of it, but at the very end, the bad guy, the demons come and they take his life. And it was a brutal scene, and it was so violent. And that's what it was like, just watching this guy's life leave his body.
And it was you said his heart burst, right?
Essentially, he had a massive heart attack. And, there was, a lot of body fluid, and the sounds and just watching it was a terrible experience. This, for a young guy. Yeah. And the actual death, it took a little bit of time. And then when he finally expired, we tried to bring him back for, at that time, it probably had to be 30, 40 minutes before EMS got there. Wow. And then after that, I just happened to have a good friend that was Air Force security on base. And, I was fine up until that moment. And when I saw him, I started crying. Like as soon as I knew I was safe, I was able to kind of let it go. I got back to my unit, and at that time it was just, Edwards, are you okay? Yeah. And, being a young Marine, I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's good. Yeah. And then it wasn't until, my, a few years into my first marriage that, my wife at the time, she's like, you have PTSD. Yeah. So with that said, I went to the VA, and, in all honesty, I went to the VA just to see if there were benefits I qualified for, never thinking in a million years I had PTSD, never even thinking it. Right. And, I had gone to the office of, the Veteran Service Organization, and, the guy I was talking to was like a Purple Heart combat vet. And I'm feeling like, all right, this is ridiculous. What happened didn't happen in combat. You carry a lot of shame. And that's debilitating. Shame can it can definitely be a distraction. So I'm telling him my story, and I just naturally started crying as I'm telling the story. Again, not thinking anything of it. And, this combat vet, his eyes got really big, and he goes, well, we got a problem. There's a problem. So they sent me right to the mental health clinic, talked to a psychiatrist, and they enrolled me in a 12-week program for cognitive behavior.
Let me pause there before you get into that, because I know that's going to lead us down into some of your open doors, outdoor stuff. Let's talk about for a minute what it was like for the realization that you had PTSD.
I guess, even to hear you say it like that, it's hard. You feel like a failure. You feel like you're weak. You feel like, there's guys that go to they're in combat, they come back, and We joked about it earlier. Like everybody's fine. These guys are fine,
Yeah.
and
That's what everybody says.
you watch someone die in a training exercise. It can't have that impact. So it was very shameful, to feel like I was that person. And it was even years after that I was able to just be like, no, it's the card, it's the card you got dealt.
Yeah. Trauma's not just a combat related thing. I mean, PTSD is something that people can face from a rough upbringing. They can face it from traumatic car accidents and various different things of that nature. So I think the military, the Marine Corps, especially, we associate like, and it's what's the word I'm trying to think of? Capacity, right? Because we've seen what can be, we've seen the capacity that some guys can take. We put ourselves at that level, thinking like, well, if I didn't experience what they experienced, that I couldn't have trauma. I couldn't have anything from that. But that's not the case. Trauma is something that happens to many people in many different ways. And so I think it's awesome you overcame that shame idea. And do you think that feeling of some of the shame, like this wasn't a combat related thing, ever kept you from ever seeking help or even considering you needed it?
Yeah, absolutely. So during that training I received at the VA, I joke about there were two key takeaways that changed my life. The first one, it was a quote from another Marine that it literally said, I felt such shame about this because it didn't happen in combat. So when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, there's someone else, another Marine that felt the same thing that I felt. And it was freeing. I was like, oh my gosh. And the second thing that changed I can't remember what it was. And I think that's part of the PTSD. I just remember there were two key takeaways that changed my thinking about about having PTSD. And I can't remember what the second one was. But the first one, I still hold on to that one. I can share that
awesome.
one.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. I love that. And so you're there, you're getting the help. You went through the behavioral therapy. Now, how did life change for you? What were some of the significant things? Like if you've got a guy you're talking to right now and he either thinks he has PTSD or someone has told him he has PTSD and he's fighting about it, what are some things you would share with him on the other side of getting help, like to encourage him, like, look, you don't know what you're missing out on?
Yeah. God's so purposeful in his plan. And we will talk a little bit more about open doors, outdoors, but I know I'm not a therapist and I know I'm not a counselor and I know what I'm not, but I know what I am. And I'm a veteran that has PTSD from a traumatic experience while in service. And I just share my story just like I am right now with you.
Yeah.
So if there's someone that is dealing with it, I can just share my piece of it. We have a lot of combat veterans that come through and, I tell everybody the same thing, not the individuals, but if someone says, hey, my son is a combat vet and I want you to talk to him, I say, listen, I'll talk to him and I can connect with him on the level of trauma.
Yeah.
I can't connect with him on the level of combat. I wasn't there. But trauma connects us all in one way or another.
Absolutely.
So I just share my story because my life is really so good. God has been so good. So they see a guy that they don't see, the last 9 years. They see right now, they see an organization, they see a sharp truck, they see all the pictures on social media. They see a guy that to them wants to help them, but they haven't seen or heard
the journey to get there,
what it took to get here. So people see it. And a lot of people, see us now and they're like, hey, I want to do what you're doing. I want to start an organization. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't know. It just comes down to how bad you've had it, how bad you've struggled that because the veterans, we don't trust anyone. I can't speak for you, but I know I don't trust anyone. If someone says they have a free service for veteran, I'm like, it's not free. They want my email. They want something from me. So when we're, if I'm dealing with, different veterans, I just assume they're not going to trust me. They're struggling. They're where I was or in a worse spot. And I just share the story.
Yeah, that's good. And coming out of the therapy there and going into some things you've done now, would you say that your PTSD was impacted you as a husband or as a father at all? And did you see any good adjustments after you got help?
I think I can be very critical of other people and I can be very judgmental. And I think that, when you're going through PTSD training, it's those two things aren't really there. You know, they're not that acute. The symptoms, they're not going super deep. They just want to dress the surface up. But when I really think about all the things, and it wasn't just, you know, that traumatic experience with, you know, the gunner sergeant, watching my mom die of cancer, you know, at 16 years old.
Man. Yeah.
It was brutal. You know, I'll never forget the morning she passed. I was, you know, I was at my college dorm. We had canceled my deployment date because we knew the day was coming quick. And I got the call, and what I carried from that was I wasn't there. I wasn't home with my mom. You know, I was in my college dorm room, and I was probably partying the night before, and all these things you carry with you. So, you know, as young adults, these guys are seeing a lot of different things, and all the trauma, combat, whatever it is, they also had other things that they were bringing with them. Oh, yeah. So it just kind of compounds, you know, you know, what had happened with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're talking about carrying with us, I think that's where, you know, again, you've mentioned it, like, just God is so good. And our faith in Christ, man, when we trust Jesus as our Savior, we accept that forgiveness that's offered. It is freeing, because He cast our sins as far as the east is from the west. He chooses not to remember them. The problem we have, and I'm sure I know I do, is I hold my sin over my head. And I think that happens for guys maybe that have experienced trauma, whether they'll blame themselves, like I could have done something, or they're going through different things. But finding that freedom in Christ is just such a key.
Yeah, and I think we set ourselves up for failure, because, you know, everything you said is absolutely true. But, you know, what we need is someone to say, hey, listen, but you're going to forget it.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to lose it. Yeah. And it's going to be a daily struggle.
Yes. Yeah.
And the truth is in some ways is miscommunicated, because it is such a great thing, but you got to fight for it. You got to fight for it every day. That's why you have to be in devotion. You have to go to church. You have to be involved with other men. Yeah. That's one of my New Year's resolutions, was to be more involved with our men's group and our men's ministry. But I do. And as we get older, you know, God has proven Himself so many times, and unfortunately, for the younger guys that haven't seen God move as many years as us older guys, you know, we're able to, when something's going wrong, we're able to say, wait a minute, you know, God has a history of blessing my life. God has a history of showing up. You know, even though I went through those things, God got me through. Where at 20, I didn't have that history.
No,
I didn't have the experience with God.
Yeah.
So there's really something to be said for being, you know, an old man in God. You know, I'm 52. I'm not an old man yet, but I've walked with God for so many years, and He's been so faithful that I do have such a notebook filled of Him showing up.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's where, you know, the wisdom of older men come in, and why we need the encounters with men of different ages. You know, we've got a marriage group going on right now at our church. And one of the things I love about it is there is a couple in there that is engaged to be married. There's a couple in there that got married later in life. I think they got married in their 40s, first marriage. And then there's a couple in there that's been together for like 20 years there. And it's just like, there's this great mix of, and there's a couple in there. There's two couples in there that are in their like 60s, 70s retirement age. And so there is so much wisdom in that room. And you get the same thing at a men's group or in something like that, where you've got men from all different generations being able to share and pour in. And, you know, the older men, if you will, can feed off some of the energy of the younger guys, but us younger guys, we got to kind of learn to shut up sometimes and just listen.
Yeah, this is very true.
So we got out of, you know, so we went through the PTSD training and stuff, and then let's talk about the marriage and kind of what happened there. Yeah,
got married when I was 30, and we had 3 children. It's my first marriage, and it was it ended in divorce. And you know, I can go back and try to figure out what happened, and the wisdom, you know, when I finally can sit back and look at it, and, you know, we go through and say, well, that was my fault, or that wasn't my fault, or that was 1% my fault, or that was all their fault. And, you know, I came up with this idea. I call it the 1% rule. And what I found in my life was that if I was only 1% responsible for that, if 99% of it wasn't my fault, you know, but 1% was, I'm sorry, if I was in a position where that 1%, I could take that 1% and say, well, it was still partly their fault. I was only this much responsible for it. And I would basically, write off anything I had done, anything that was really wrong or my behavior. So I started taking 100% responsibility for the marriage as a man of God.
That's awesome.
And what happened was there were so many areas in that marriage where I wasn't acting like a man of God. I was just a Marine. I was just a husband. And I started looking back and I'm like, well, that wasn't my fault. But it was. Ultimately, it was my house. It was my family. It was my wife. It was my kids. And, we talked a little bit about drinking. And, I can look back and honestly say I drank too much.
Yeah.
Now, I drank far less than some really cool Marines out there, and if
I've seen it.
If we're just talking about a worldly guy, then it was business as normal.
Yeah,
but as a man of God, I fell short.
Yeah.
Well, way short. But what I realized with that, because I took that ownership, I was able to forgive my wife at the time for, looking back, I could just see all the different things that went wrong. But when I stopped and God's like, dude, I gave you a job. You didn't do it. It's between me and you, my how I deal with, your ex-wife or my daughter, that's between me and her. Me and you fell short. You failed as what I had hoped would be.
So that personal accountability piece, when we can take that on, it really, and we can't take responsibility for someone else's actions. We can't take responsibility for what someone else did, but we got to take, like you said, that 1%. I can take 100% responsibility for that 1%, and then we can move forward. But it's until you take your own personal responsibility, you can't do anything because you're blaming everyone else for it. Right?
Nobody wants that. It's I don't know if it's ego or whatever, but when I just started just laying it all out there, like, you know what? Even though it was only 1%, it's really 100% in God's eyes as a man of God.
There you go.
So I started taking that and saying, nope, all my, finances. Well, I wasn't in charge of finance. It doesn't matter. I was the man of the house.
Yeah.
I can say, well, I wasn't in charge, so it wasn't my fault. Well, I should have been. I should have been more involved. And
so that led to the divorce.
It was rough. I have 3 kids, 17, 16, and 13. I have a great relationship with them. And for so many years, I wanted to bash my ex-wife, and I wanted everyone to know, the circumstances surrounding it and how what she did was horrible. And as the years went on, I was like, you know what? It's one of those things where I want that woman to succeed, to be a blessing to my kids. I want to see the mother of my children do well, to be a blessing. And God he doesn't honor when we basically try to destroy or vindicate. We talked about vindication. I was trying to vindicate myself. It wasn't me. It was, I didn't do these things.
He says vengeance is his.
It was his. Oh, it's his.
We give it to him. We let him do it.
Yeah. He carries a big stick, and we often get in the way, but I was horrible. Absolutely horrible. Yeah. It was horrible. And I look back now, and one of the biggest regrets of my life are the things I said in anger that were true. And I never lied. I never said things that weren't true about my ex-wife, but the things I said, they were in anger, and it was bad. And it's good for me to say it and say it to you. And I've shared that with many people, because that's freeing in itself, just that kind of confession. But it was rough. And, the things associated with the divorce and everything else were very, very difficult for me. But the result of the divorce, was that I was left alone with 3 kids half the time in my house. In the midst of that, I was going through bankruptcy. So divorce, bankruptcy, employment issues, PTSD, drinking too much, and trying to
like a triple trifecta right there.
It was. I can look at it now and see, like, wow, that was awesome. Yeah. Now I can look back and be like, God, it's one of those things where it talked about, the apostles when they were flogged and they rejoiced in it.
Yeah.
See, where I failed was I wasn't rejoicing.
No, I'm sure.
In the midst of it. Looking back now, I can say, had I been more squared away, and I don't look back and with regret in that area. I know that, I can see where I failed and know that I'll do better next time. Maybe not where I want to be. but I can look back now and be like, wow, this is the story.
Yeah.
This is my story.
That's it.
And, real quick, not to get off track, when I was 14 years old, I was at Camp Saginaw in Pennsylvania. It's a couriers camp through First Assembly of God.
Okay.
And I ended up meeting a girl there. Her name was Kari Hageland, and she was my little girlfriend for the week. You go to the dance, and we ended up staying out after hours. And as I go back to my camp, my youth pastor's there, the camp director, head of security, and they're like, you're going home. So they're going to send me home for not being compliant to the hours. And they called the pastor. Pastor's like, you can't send him home alone. He's 14 years old. So they put me in this little dirty little room in the first aid building at the camp. There's cobwebs. The mattress is all stained. Oh. It's the one with the stripes. And, it's on it was bad. Oh, and so I'm in there, and at that time I had this amazing amount of peace come over me. And I'll never forget, I felt God say, you're going to speak to thousands and thousands and thousands. And I held on to that my whole life. And so I was 14, and I'm thinking, all right, it's like when David got anointed to be king, but it didn't happen right away. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to be the speaker. I'm going to be a pastor. I'm going to be a movie star. I'm going to be a commercial actor, whatever it is. And it never happened. Like nothing happened except the story. And God started laying out the story for me to tell, because up until then at 14, I had no story. 16, I had no story, but the story was not one of success in the trials. It was the trials. It was all the bad things, all the tough things, all the loss, all the, my dad, I shared with you a little bit, after my mom died, my dad got married to a beautiful woman, ended up leaving her, getting remarried, and he's actually just recently divorced, and all those things, all the challenges, they're the story, and then as you're sharing your story, you get to, if you're willing, you speak of your failures. And you speak of where
Absolutely.
You fell short.
And that's what connects to people. That's why I love our podcast. We've never shied away from having someone on and sharing a story like yours, because there's more guys out there that have failed than succeeded. And they need to know that through the failure, God is faithful. There is another side. You'll get there. And again, being able to relate to and hear from men who've done it. Men After God exists so that we can help men achieve success with a thriving faith and family. And that journey to success is never ending, because success is faithful obedience to God. And it's faithful obedience through the trials. It's through the difficulties, through the trauma that you may face, to come to the other side and then be able to use this. And this is where I love your story of where you're at now, because you've taken what you went through and turned it into this amazing organization that has just this bright future ahead of it. Open doors, outdoors. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So, I'll share, it's a beauty from the ashes, it's, so fast, go back. I'm divorced. I got a little bit of momentum. I got $200 in the bank. I got a mortgage. My car got repossessed. I'm borrowing my buddy's truck.
Real great spot. Sounds amazing.
It was awesome. It was awesome. I'm having nightmares. I'm waking up every morning at 2:30 in the morning. I'm literally falling asleep with my head in my Bible. And, but I had three little kids at the time, and, no money. And so I had to keep them moving. And I'm kind of a spaz anyway. So I'm always moving, always doing stuff. So I headed to the library. I got free zoo passes, free museum passes. And I tell everybody, if you have money for gas and snacks, you can be a successful parent. That's all you need. Gas and snacks. If you got that, you can keep your kids moving. So we do the museum, we do the zoo, and I take them hiking. And the funniest thing with my kids is at any given moment on our climb, one was crying, one was laughing, and one was completely confused. And they rotated through. They rotated through the process. So they'd be crying. And now I'm going through this incredibly difficult time. Like I'm hanging on by a thread, and I'm practicing patience, and I'm getting angry, and I'm yelling at the kids, and I'm trying to remember, and I'm all over the place. I'm a mess. But we get to the top of these mountains, and I take pictures of the kids, and we'd have snacks. And, I started realizing that, if you can get 3 kids up a mountain, you're a professional guide.
Oh, yeah,
you are 100% a professional guide, because when you take adults hiking, one's laughing, one's crying, one's completely confused. It's exactly the same. And you have to get these individuals up the mountain. Yeah. So as I'm taking the kids up the mountain, I'm sharing everything on social media. And a lot of it was for myself to just show, hey, I'm doing okay. But God used that because people are seeing a social media post knowing that I'm in this traumatic experience with my divorce. And they're like, well, hey, where did you go? Like, you're doing great. Like, you got your kids out. You know, how's all this working out? Where'd you park? How long did it take to get there? And then, can you take me? Can you take me and my son? Can you take me and my daughter? Can you take my family? So I started taking these people hiking. And after about 2 years of this, I started to realize that I'm getting a little more stable. I now have, a 14-year-old minivan. That's mine. I'm paying $100 a month. My buddy actually gave it to me. He's like, pay me when you can. And so I started sharing hikes with people. And I got the idea that what an opportunity, because I'm from South Glastonbury. It's a prominent community. So on the outside, the house is painted, everything looks good. But on the inside, you're dying. Yeah. I'm like, there's got to be other guys like this. So I called my buddy who's an accountant, and I said, hey, I got an idea for a nonprofit. And I pitched it to him, and he knows exactly what's going on in my life. He's like, I love it. He goes, I love it so much. I'm going to be your first donor, and I'm going to pay for the fee to get the nonprofit started. Right. So I stopped him and I said, listen, when I started that boat company, you liked it. The mortgage company, you liked it. The frozen yogurt, you liked, and they all failed. I'm like, I got to know, like, are you sure this is not going to be one of those?
And his opinion's getting a little less and less each
I appreciate you being a yes man, but do you think it's going to work? And he goes, I get it. It's going to happen. It's going to work. And sure enough, he was my personal friend, my accountant, but he became one of the board members of Open Doors. And so Open Doors Outdoors, our mission is to take veterans, their families, and young people into the outdoors for reconnection, healthy activity, and healing. We do that through hiking, kayaking, snowshoeing, and this amazing UTV program, which is we have 2 side-by-sides that seat 5 people and 6 people. And we just try to, I'm just doing for people what kind of got me out of my hole, and giving men the opportunity that if they're struggling, if they don't have money, if they don't have gas, if they don't have food, I'm going to take you and your kids, I'm going to put you in a vehicle, I'm going to take you up a mountain, and I'm going to restore the dignity that may be lost. We're going to feed you, and then we're going to get you home, and you're going to be able to share this with your kids, because maybe you can't do it on your own. Maybe you can't afford it, whatever it is. And whether you can afford it or not, maybe you're in a great spot. Everyone gets treated the same. It's the same treatment. Everything's 100% free. And that's how it started. And that was 5 years ago.
Wow. 5 years ago. And so now you were just sharing with me, I'll let you tell it, because it's your victory there, God's victory, if you will, of just this last year. How many lives you guys have been able to impact?
Yeah. So it's through our programs, through our events, to our races of 1,000 individuals. And that number doesn't include the families. So if there's a mom or a dad that called us, they're impacted. Their lives are changed because their son or daughter is seeing improvement in their kids. And, we just lost a veteran. His name was Henry. And he started hiking with us. And he was killed. I guess it's been maybe 3 years now. He was killed in a 1-car accident in '84. And he I tell everybody he fought to make it. And, we got him hiking, we got him gear, we got him to the VA, we got him involved, we got him some benefits. And, he lost his battle. But he never stopped trying. He never stopped fighting. And we're still connected to his mom and dad. And we actually have a race that we do in honor of Henry. So the impact is not just, the individuals that we actually touch, it's their families as well.
Yeah. Because if you're impacting one life, you're impacting 1,000. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's amazing. You just launched the UTV program. I think that's really cool. So if any of our listeners, guys, if you have any autistic children or family members in your life or know someone there, listen on this. And maybe if you're not in Connecticut, but you've got maybe someone around you that could do something like this, just check this out. So talk about that UTV program you got going.
Yeah. So it was amazing. So I wrote a grant to the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, and it was for a UTV to bless the lives of disabled veterans that can't enjoy the outdoors the same way as their able-bodied counterparts. That was how it was all figured out. So we got the grant. I bought a UTV. And I said to one of our veterans who had 2 autistic boys, I said, listen, will you and the boys come out with me in the UTV so I can learn the logistics? Where are we going to park? How fast can we go? Every road crossings, like let's just figure this out. So one of his boys is nonverbal and can be difficult. And the other boy is on the spectrum, but super sharp, super cool kid. And so we get them both in the vehicle with the dad, and the nonverbal boy he's struggling a little bit, kind of just trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. So he's like, no, we're good. So I start the vehicle, and the vibration and noise from the machine, he almost calmed down instantly. And the father was like, whoa, what's going on? And I have no idea. I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on. So we just started driving, and they loved it. Beautiful family. It's husband and wife, both veterans, met in the Navy, had 2 sons while in service, both autistic. And so we started sharing these rides. And it turns out that, unbeknownst to us, there's something called vibration therapy. And vibration therapy is just that. It's the vibrations that have a positive impact on kids with autism. And it has a calming effect for the most part.
Yeah.
And in some cases, some of the parents have said that this calming effect lasted a few days.
Oh, wow.
So it's like this, it's like the coolest thing. Yeah. And again, it's all free. It's all free to the parents. But we started doing that, and we got so busy that we just got another side-by-side that seats 6. This one has power windows, air conditioning, because a lot of the kids, some will have to wear the earmuffs, dust, bugs, the dirt, any kind of outside influence can be distracting and uncomfortable for them. Okay. So we got a fully enclosed machine now. So it's just like driving around in a regular vehicle. It's amazing. It's an absolute miracle.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. All right. So let's do this. Tell us, how can our guys get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out for your Open Doors Outdoors?
Yeah. So our website is www.opendoorsoutdoors.org. And our email is admin, ADMIN, at opendoorsOutdoors.org.
Okay. And the future is bright. And I loved it. I asked him before we got on here and wanted to share with you guys, but the dream, the vision, go ahead and tell them what you're praying to God will do with this.
Yeah, the first thing I'm praying is that just, give me today. Today's the day. As long as we have today, that's great. I trust you for today. We'd love to, become a national organization with different hubs all over the U.S. As God sees fit. As it's really raising up the right men and women to run the organization in that area. But we are doing adventures nationwide right now. And that's the ultimate goal. And we're just waiting on God and just growing slow. That's what we're doing.
Amen. I love that. That's wonderful. That's so good. Guys, listen, the journey you've heard from Davey today, man, it's just deep, impactful, but with an amazing, not ending, I guess, that we don't want to call it an ending because you're still going, but just an amazing result and place he's come to, and God has brought him and is bringing him. And it all came from his faith. It came from him persevering and pushing through and being willing to reach out for help, and then now being willing to give help. So guys, if you're listening today, if you're dealing with PTSD, mental health issues or concerns, or you've been in some sort of traumatic event where you're not reaching out for help because it's not combat, it wasn't a murder, it wasn't something so serious, but it was still traumatic to you, don't be ashamed. Call someone. Reach out, get some professional help, and talk to somebody about it. Hey, if you want to go for a hike and you're in the Connecticut, tri-state area up here, give Davey a call. He'll take you for a hike, maybe on a UTV ride. I would tell a funny story about a UTV. I hope you don't ever do this. I came back from deployment, and that was something they did for us. It was like, hey, guys, go. It's Operation Adrenaline Rush. So they let you go out, and then you go, and you can ride ATV. Sometimes they'll do jet skiing. We did the ATVs thing. I was in one of these side-by-sides. It was a 2-seater, and it's just got a cage. And so I'm going up, I go up over this hill, and I flip this thing end over end. And I got another guy with me. I broke that thing. And so you guys don't flip them while you're riding, do you?
We're super conservative, really super conservative. And, it's all, and as I'm enjoying these experiences, I tell everybody the same thing. My favorite part of a hike is when it's over, when the liability has dissipated, everyone's home safe, when the UTV ride is over. I'm like a liability guy. It's super conservative.
That's
super
funny.
Conservative.
I was not, and it's good that you are. Yeah. But guys, listen, go get help. find help, find someone, and talk to them. Davey, thank you so much for sharing your story today, man. Guys are going to be blessed by this. I'm excited to see what God does with your organization.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, Davey. Guys, what a great conversation. And again, don't forget, you can connect with us on Facebook, facebook.com/Men After God podcast. Or if you want to be a part of our community that's continuing to grow, facebook.com/groups/Men After God. We'd love to connect with you in there. We've got weekly live streams going on Tuesday nights, sharing a number of different things from our 4 different coaches we have, bringing input there. Don't forget, the Men After God book is launching in March, April timeframe. We'll get a better date as that comes around. And if you ever need anything, some prayer or connection, reach out. And if we can't be the ones you need to talk to, we'll find guys like Davey or someone else that would love to connect with you on your journey. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Men After God podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and keep up with the show by following us at facebook.com/Men After God. You can also reach out to Dustin personally at dustin@seekconsulting.us with any questions or for coaching on being a man after God. Until next time.